Kick off.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon / evening. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? Thanks for sitting around for the whole day, and we're the last to present today, so we'll try and make it as quick as possible so we can get to the speed dating. We are going to give a quick presentation about the unit work and also what we're doing this year, the agenda, try and give you an overview and a flavor for the year. I'm Tyen Masten, and this is Inigo Mins, and we're Masten and Mins from Intermediate 12. Not to be confused with Chris and Chris. We're actually the fun unit, I believe.
Just to be clear on that, yeah.
So last year, Intermediate 12 explored how specific events and their associated activities might stimulate the production of architecture and urban life. From the intimate scale to the catastrophic, from the natural to the political and historical. These events became the drivers for developing individual projects over the year. So this year, we'll be continuing to look at how events can contribute to the design of our cities and buildings. However, we will be focusing on the smaller scale of the moment. Just wanted to share a quick video with you guys. Well, it's not that quick. So as mentioned, this year we'll be focusing the research on small-scale moments and how smaller actions and rituals can be the force behind the development of architecture over time. In particular, how they can evolve and grow and have implications on the way we live in the future. We'll be researching into the peripheral and the marginal conditions that will become the norm in the 20 years' time, and the emerging trends that will become the drivers of change. We can look at these small moments through a number of lenses. For example, they could be social moments, emerging technologies, economic shifts, environmental happenings, political events, etc., etc.
So here we see an example of how such small moments that might seem insignificant or peripheral can expand into the future to become a significant cultural or political force. Rosa Parks refusing to leave the section of the bus allocated to white people and subsequently being arrested. An act that gave focus and momentum to the equal rights movement campaigns of the 1960s. Campaigns that eventually changed everything from legislation, politics to economics and the way that our cities, buildings and spaces are conceived. During the year, we'll expand on such moments and speculate on the implications they may have on the built environment.
However, these formative moments are not only political, but could look at the impact that formal ceremonies have on a broader society, or how emerging rituals start to appear and become established actions. How speculative practices and moments could become architectural and spatial, or theatrical experiences can be arranged as a sequence of smaller moments through space. Or finally, how moments can become embedded in media culture.
We'll begin by looking at these moments globally and then focus on what the implications of these future trends could be on Mexico City, which is the site of our unit trip this year. I think it's important to emphasize research for us and how important that is in terms of developing the projects. And I think you will all, anyone who comes into the unit will find that a lot of the source of material for their projects will come directly from the city itself. So we're just going to throw a few kind of general facts to get you excited about Mexico City. 19 million people population in the metropolitan zone. 60% of construction carried out by the informal sector. There's a 2-hour, 30-minute average commute time with half the underground network of London and 50,000 minibuses in service. 60% of employment happens in the informal sector. There's people just lining up in the streets. If you need a plumber, you go and find them. Only 7.5% land use for recreation. 22% of the whole of Mexico's GDP is contributed by the city. And this is looking a bit more into the future, which is something we're quite interested in doing in the unit. A leading global supplier of oil by 2025. And by 2050, the 5th largest economy in the world. So as part of the production, of the travelogue, we'll be visiting historical sites from the pre-Columbian to the European Baroque, and taking some classic 20th century architecture such as Lou Barragan here, as well as exploring more current examples from the exciting contemporary architectural scene that's thriving at the moment. What we're going to be doing is looking for sort of peripheral activities and places that might be the source of future cultural trends. Here we can see, these are some ancient Aztec canals. In fact, Mexico City used to be built on a series of lakes, so it's rather like Venice when the Spanish arrived. And there are still remnants of some of the canals left over. So these places that might become revived to trigger or stimulate development in the future. Or Las Pozas, a magical surrealist garden that was the private expression of one man's vision of nature and architecture. Absolutely amazing place that we hope to get to while we're out there. And it's not incidental, this. We'll be fortunate enough to be there for the Day of the Dead Festival, the largest festival in Mexico and one of the biggest in the world. While we're out there, we've borrowed this building, which is a 17th century sort of formal house in the center of town. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be holding a crit there, essentially, and hosting a small event, which the students, you guys, will organise. Here you can see this was our, at the end of the project's review show, this was our effort. We had a lovely meal at the end of the year. Anyway, so back to Mexico, we'll be inviting local architects, artists, and cultural commentators to come and contribute and comment on your project.
So one of the key tools of the unit is using the architectural score as a way of developing the project. This is something that I think a lot of people in the unit kind of came to terms with as it goes through the year. So we're going to be continuing to look at the architectural score as this key element in the description of the event and the production of the building. These scores can be records of existing conditions and experiences, or records of time frames and spaces. We'll be referencing musical scores and looking at notating different moments over time to create textured textured experiences that contain information, atmosphere, people and technology, and of course, architecture. Included in the score, there will be the unit's key themes, which I'm sure if you were in the unit last year, you're going to love hearing this, which were time, community, spatial context, materiality, and legacy. Here in Bea's score from last year that explores the different stages of the preparation for death in the city of Istanbul. In this one, Brandon looked at how a rumor moves through the city, touching on different characters as it goes. Nicholas used the score to trace 4 different participants in the gold parties of Istanbul. And Lorenzo traced the movement of water through the city and looking at what it affects at different scales. And Nicholas is again. And Brandon, and Beas. Sorry. Wrong way.
Oops. So recognizing architecture is a sequence of real-life moments over time, we'll be testing the moments at one-to-one and in real time in the school. We'll be celebrating mess, accident, human failure as real generators of content for the projects. and challenge the nature of speculative design by testing and proving parts of the proposal. I think we are sometimes sitting in that region of speculative design, but also with a kind of critique that hovers over it as well. We will be inviting others to participate, these participants themselves becoming partial authors of the projects, allowing us essentially to relinquish some of our authorship and control. So here's a nice example from last year when Stefan created a series of theatrical pieces that looked at the interactions between people, actions, and spaces within the school. Beaux-Arts, who staged a demonstration and tested the use of inflatables within the existing infrastructure. In fact, this ended up contributing quite a lot, I think, to his TS. Lorenzo introduced a new tea delivery service into the school, and in doing so recognised the messy nature of events and interactions and the strange looping of time that can occur. You'll see that time is a theme that follows through everything that we're looking at here. Brandon spread rumours around the school, some of you may have seen this, testing the use of different media in his project, such as this poster advertising a fake AA logo competition, producing numerous entries. It's important to say, that these tests, they were a lot of fun to do, but at the same time, they did also become central to the students' understanding of their projects. And a lot of things that were developed in the school were actually brought back into the project and done with more conviction in the end.
So we come at the student project from a lot of different venues. We come through the event, we come through drawing, we come through research, but we also ask them to inform their projects at different scales through different medium. So each student will be asked to produce a series of what we call impressions and vignettes to further develop the projects. These could be explored through sketches and watercolors, collage, graphics, illustrations and tapestries, or montage. We find that this is one entry doing these vignettes that allow the student to gain access to different parts of the project that they weren't able to through just drawing a plan per se. For example, Beaux-Arts' impressions for the Office of Protest Architecture, which became a series of vignettes describing moments in his intervention, or Nicholas's impressions illustrating power and escapism, made like Hello Magazine cutouts, developing into the materiality of his project, and Lorenzo imagining a bathing house through an impression that informed the atmosphere of his proposal. Each student will also be producing a set of documents which are seen as precious items that are there to support the project at the end of the year. These documents will be central to the student portfolio and can be filmic or spatial, or can be a series of objects produced to clearly illustrate the individual student thesis. Some examples from last year include Sandra's forensic mappings, which explore the relationship between the government and the dervishes in Istanbul, or a series of screen-printed posters which were created by Brandon to broadcast his rumor, or Jin's series of souvenirs and memorabilia for the tourist community, and Nicholas transformed his score into the form of an Hermès silk scarf that records the stages of gold gift exchanges.
On to something slightly different that we're, again, developing from last year. This year we'll be expanding on the idea that architecture is composed of a sequence of moments that come together to form a whole. Moments that reflect the individual users and occupiers of a building. Moments that can be looked at, first of all, as individual points in time and space, and reflect particular rituals and practices. These individual moments and spaces can then be connected and brought together to form a coherent sequence of related objects, a sequence that references the moments in the score. And importantly, eventually forming a comprehensive and livable whole. So once they're put back together again, you end up with something that, on a larger scale, is much more coherent. So how will we be doing this? We'll be doing this through a combination of techniques, including casting and digital processes.
So we thought we'd just kind of run through a few of the student projects from last year. I think you've seen some snippets, but we'll quickly go through. But the point of the unit is not just to look at these moments, but it is to consider what the architectural and urban implications of these moments are. We encourage each student to develop their own individual projects and ask what the legacy of their architectural project is and how it impacts the city. For example, Beaux-Arts created these inflatable bombs which were inserted into the Hagia Sophia to inform the tourists of Istanbul of the ongoing protests. Brandon's broadcasting tower, which would eventually transform Kamlika Hill and become a piece of infrastructure that facilitates the spreading of rumors. Or Stefan's theater on the rails that transformed the city into a series of theatrical spaces, bringing the public realm into the performance. And Nicholas, who explored the currency of reputation, investigating an informal economy that eventually becomes more formalized, transforming an existing high-rise and the distribution of wealth in Istanbul.
So a little bit more on the structure of this. I mean, again, we think it's really important that students take control of their own projects. I mean, it's something we very strongly encourage, that it grows out of the research that you yourselves find interesting. However, at the same time, we try and provide a strong backbone that runs through the unit, that's something that you can all rely on. So as part of this, we'll be holding a series of workshops and working with a number of different specialists to help you develop your projects and portfolios. Over the first weeks, we'll hold intensive Rhino sessions to build up strong levels of modelling resolution. These will be aligned with workshops on using Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign to help elevate raw models into more compelling communicative drawings. We'll be looking at different languages and traditions of image making and modelling that could be used to inspire your work. And we'll hold drawing and portfolio workshops to help with the production of your final projects. Where we will place a particular emphasis on developing the right language for your individual proposals and the themes you are working with. So borrowing ideas and techniques from other disciplines to help transform how you produce and communicate your work beyond the familiar modes of architectural representation. For the TS, we'll be doing the second option, but we'll be working as a group from the early stages of the projects with the TS team to ensure that the technical aspects are fully aligned with the students' research. We'll also be working with a broader team of consultants between London and Mexico City, from engineers to animators, architects, curators, and artists. Here we see an image of a workshop held with Arab Foresight, which is their foresight and trending department, looking at integrating future global trends into the projects, and it's something we'll do again this year, and we might try to integrate a little bit more deeply. So
just a quick summary of the unit. We'll be creating a series of event research books, building up a body of research together to use as a reference for the year. Moment agendas drawn from the case studies and the trip to Mexico. You will begin to develop a building proposal. Portfolio workshops to develop your skills in drawing, presentation, and communication. A spatial framework, three-dimensional models based on the moments you've defined. Building proposals set in Mexico City with a program developed from your newly defined event and moment. And lastly, a set of documents developed to communicate the particular qualities of your project. We're just about done. We have one last video we'd like to share, and just for fun. So finally, just a little bit about us as a unit. We work as a group to support each other throughout the year. The students are encouraged to develop their own agendas and research areas. We ask that you are dedicated and work very hard. And very importantly, we ask that you all have fun. And thank you very much for sticking around this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.